Hello, welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by Mark Withers. And if you're watching on YouTube, you will see that we've ventured out of the studio and we're sitting in Leazes Park, in the shadow of St James's Park. And that is the topic of today's very special episode. Namely, where are Newcastle United going to call home for the next generation? It is a question that everybody is asking, and one in truth that no one has the answers to. Not me, not Mark, and not those in the boardroom who are finally going to put pen to paper. But it is a question we're going to try and get to the bottom of. We're going to share our insight and we're going to share our viewpoints as well. So much to discuss on a topic which splits the fan base. It's one that is made up of emotion and, of course, business, because that is now what football is sadly built upon. Mark, welcome back. You good? You well?
I am. Glorious day here on Tyneside. Been a while since it's been like this under blue skies. Glorious surroundings. A lot of magpies around as well. I've just noticed that. Don't know if that's a sign or not. Probably not. But yeah, and we are sitting on the wettest bench ever.
Yeah, we did try and dry it down, but it didn't work, and it's very, very soggy. It is indeed.
All in the world of content,
yeah.
Isn't it?
This is all for you guys.
It's all about the content.
So make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you hit like on the video. Get into the comments and let us know your thoughts on the future of St James's Park. I want to start, Mark, with what St James's Park means to you, because every time I walk past it, whether it's a match day and I'm walking up to it, whether I'm just walking into work or even just on the walk here, it still gives me butterflies because it's such an iconic stadium. You know, it just dwarfs the rest of the city. What does it mean to you?
Well, my first experience of football was there, as I'm sure it was for pretty much everyone watching. I mean, January 1988 was my first game, Swindon Town, the FA Cup. Fourth round, Newcastle won 5-0. Gaza was playing, my first ever football hero. But it's so many memories of, you know, falling in love with football, falling in love with the club, alongside my dad, who came here throughout his childhood and adulthood, and his dad as well. I mean, our family have been coming to games since the early 1900s, so it means everything to me, St James's. And you look at it, you're right, when we walked up here from the Chronicle offices, there is still that buzz, isn't there, when you see it? And we walked up towards the East Stand, which, with all due respect to the East Stand, isn't exactly the prettiest of the four stands, if you want to call it that. But there's still that, well, there's St James's, there's still that buzz. Whenever I come through town and you walk past it or drive past it, it's still always, wow, like, there it is. And I think of some of the happiest days of my life have been spent in there. You know, some of the saddest days of my life have been spent in there as well, by the way. But it just means everything, doesn't it? And it's why this is such an emotive subject, and why discussing what comes next is almost and I realise we're going to come on to this, it's almost a sad representation of where football has gone now, where we have to sometimes take a little bit of romance and emotion out of it and focus on the cold, hard world of cash and business and progress. So it's a really difficult one, and there's going to be a lot of different opinions. People might not agree with what we say, but that's kind of sums up the whole subject.
Yeah, indeed. I think for me, it's just everything, isn't it? You know, you can go away for a few days and you come back on the train and there it is, the first thing you see when you come across the bridges. It's just very, very special. Driving into the city centre, there it is again. And I've got 2 young kids now, and the first thing I wanted to do with my little girl when she was old enough was take her to a game, and we did that in the pre-season just gone, and it was fantastic because I got to take my little girl to a football game at the stadium where I spent so much of my time. And this is why, like you say, it's a topic which just splits the fan base, and there'll be so many different opinions, some built on that emotion that we've been speaking about, some built on the business sense which ultimately powers your football club to success. And that's really the next question, because for those in the boardroom who are making these decisions, how important is it that they remove the emotion from it, and how big of a part does that play in getting to the final decision to whether they move, extend, whatever they end up doing?
At this point, I'm not sure if having people in the boardroom who don't have that ingrained emotion for the club, that nostalgia, probably helps the end decision or not, because I think sometimes there is a need for a dose of emotion to be made in every decision. And let's be honest, Newcastle United is one of the most emotional football clubs in the country, whether that's a positive or a negative. there's a lot of emotion involved, a lot of nostalgia, as I say. Generation upon generation of families on Tyneside and beyond have come to St James's Park for years upon years now, and it's just not going to be an easy call either way. I don't envy anyone making the decisions. I don't think there is a decision where everyone's happy. I think you will get, rightly so by the way, you will get people who think if they do move to a new stadium, if it is here, there will be people who will mourn the loss of St James's almost. And again, rightly so. But then you will get, if you say we'll stay at St James's, we can't extend it by another, I don't know, say 7,000-8,000, whatever it may be, you will get people that will think they've taken the easy way out, and it's kind of stood in the way of what they'll see as progression. And we talk, we live in a PSR world, or SCR as it's going to be called now, and things are very different. So Newcastle have to look at revenue streams. Obviously, as we're recording this, we've just had the year-end accounts out. We've heard about what's happened with St James's, the sale of it to a subsidiary of the club. There's clearly things moving one way or another, and I just don't think there is an easy decision to make. The emotion side, I think it should play a part, the nostalgia, the historical side of it, but I'm not sure it will. I think this will be a cold hard business decision either way.
It's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because I can see both points of view. From a business point of view, brand new stadium can really offer a helping hand in the battle against the financial restrictions, which are ultimately stopping Newcastle United becoming the very best version of themselves. It allows for more commercial revenue, other events to be put on other than just football matches. But there's always going to be that argument to whether getting to an arena like that, which can offer all of that, comes at the cost of ripping the soul out of the football club.
Yeah, I mean, and it is still very much an if there was a move to be made, they would have a real battle on the hands to try and replicate the emotion that is evoked inside St James's. Now, you look at new stadiums that have been built in the last sort of 20 years, even longer. The Emirates, they faced a real battle too, because I loved Highbury. Highbury was one of my favourite grounds because of the history, the nostalgia, everything about it. It felt like a classy stadium, if you can have such a thing. But I think a lot of them haven't really captured what went before. You look at, Tottenham's new ground is unbelievable, by the way. But has it got the atmosphere that White Hart Lane did? I'm massively sure. But
what is that down to? Because I hear this argument, but it's fair to say that for a lot of games this season at St James's Park, the atmosphere hasn't been there.
There is. That's a really good point.
And I don't necessarily subscribe to the argument, because for me, a fan is a fan. Whether you're there at St James's Park in a couple of weeks against Bournemouth, or whether in 5 or 6 years' time here in a new stadium in Leazes Park, it's about the heart and the commitment and the desire of the fan. And we know, because we're both fans, how passionate the fan base is.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that's an easy cop out, because a fan should be passionate wherever they call home. So I don't necessarily think that is an issue.
It's a really interesting one though, but I just feel as if maybe going beyond that and looking at the history of St James's, you can't really take that to a new stadium. Again, other clubs have tried it, haven't they? Tottenham have taken aspects of White Hart Lane and placed it in the new stadium. Arsenal did the same with Highbury to the Emirates. So, what would Newcastle do? What would they take? What will go into a new stadium if they were to do that? Again, it's not an easy decision. It comes down to, horribly, it comes down to heart versus head, I think.
But then I use that as motivation. Think about all the lovely memories we've had here, the Champions League nights, the Premier League near misses, nearly winning the title under Keegan and all of that. And take that into a brand new stadium, if that is indeed what's going to happen, and create new memories. So in 100 years' time, when we're long gone, Mark, people are talking about those new memories in a new stadium. That is the motivation for me. It's been brilliant what we've had, but let's go and create something extra special. And actually, let's go and win something on a consistent basis and talk about not just the best goals we've seen, not just about the exciting matches we've been to, but about the trophies that Newcastle United have lifted. And that for me is really, really key. And look, I'll be honest, if it was a new stadium, and I am leaning towards that, what I would like to see is them kind of build a Wembley way up to here. So let's say it's in here, for example, make a space, make a corridor lined with shops and restaurants and bars and trees, and a nice corridor to walk up, just like Wembley Way. You're walking up to Leazes Park, through the old St James's Park, into a brand new stadium, and therefore you've got that little bit of history still there, little bit of reflection about where you used to call home, but then you're walking up and you see it just appearing over the horizon as you get to the top of the bank. This is what we call home now, and look at it, it's beautiful.
You're romanticising it again, aren't you? That's what you've done there. You've gone and romanticised it again.
Got to paint a picture, right?
You do. You've done it pretty well. I don't know. I mean, you look at this place as well. It's not going to be easy to get through litigation to get something in here. It's going to be a really tough and long-fought battle for a number of reasons. There will be protests. There will be, a lot of people that will be against Leazes Park being, built upon.
Well, the right reasons.
100%.
Because I say there, build a corridor coming up to Leazes Park, but actually, my actual opinion is that if it is going to be here, and it will be done through the books if it does appear here, but it has to be done right, and because there's a lot of people in this city who care more about this park than Newcastle United, and that's perfectly fine. Newcastle United means everything to you and I and everyone watching, but it doesn't mean everything to everyone in this city. And for some, this park will hold extra special memories, and there will be a lot of red tape to jump through. It's a Grade 2 listed park. You've got wonderful bits of history here. You've got the life, the habitat. You've got the wildlife. There's a lot of things that Newcastle United would have to do before they get anywhere near putting a spade in the ground. But it is right that if this is their ideal location, that it goes through the proper consultation. And there's not just an expectation that when Newcastle United, and we can just take this land to build on. And I'm sure that's not going to be the way it's going to be. But I know fans, when you approach the subject like that and you say, we're there, this park means a lot to others, they go, oh, it's only a park. St James's Park should get the priority. Well, no, it has to be done right. And I'm sure it will be, but it won't be easy, as you say.
Well, we were talking before we were recording, and, when my son was born back in 2014 in the RVI, and he was in for 2 weeks, and we weren't allowed to bring him out. He was in special care in Tiny Lives in the unit there, and my wife stayed in with him, and we used to come round to Leazes Park for a walk every day to try and get her moving again after what happened when he was born. And it does have those special memories as well. And you're right, not everyone in the city is, as much as we like to paint that picture, not everyone is a football fan. Places like Leazes Park will mean more to them than the football club ever will. So that's why it's difficult, because there is going to be a lot of emotions on both sides, a lot of strong debate on both sides. And again, I don't think it isn't a decision Newcastle will take lightly. I think it's been referenced as a once-in-a-generation decision. And I don't think that's a once-in-a-generation decision just for the club. It's for the city and as you say, for this place as well, Leazes Park, because it is a wonderful site with a lot of history in itself, as much as we love to think St James's has that as well. So, like I say, it's going to be a really tough path to a final decision.
Just a reminder, this episode is sponsored by NordVPN and Saily. Do click the link in the podcast description box for discounted offers on both products. One subscription can be used across 10 devices on your NordVPN download, and Saily is an eSIM providing you with the best network coverage at affordable prices for when you head over to your holidays this summer. So, Mark, what is the update when it comes to St James's Park? Well, essentially, there really isn't one, is there? So let me just read you a quote to obviously Newcastle's accounts came out earlier this month, or towards the end of last month, wasn't it? And it revealed that they sold the stadium to a sister company, and that was said to be down to reorganising our property assets and get them into the correct legal boxes to allow us to go forward with our potential development either at St James's Park or for a new stadium, and to facilitate that with financing and other similar items. They sold it for £133 million, which allowed them to make a profit in the 24-25 accounts. David Hopkinson, the CEO of Newcastle United, when he was asked about an update on St James's Park, he said, "We're not ready to make any decisions. Training ground is closer. I understand the frustration. I really do. I'm going to reiterate something we've said before. It's so important. So much of what needs to occur quietly and in the background, and frankly some of it's not tremendously exciting as we work through a scenario plan. Reorganising the company's ownership regarding the stadium to give us strategic optionality is absolutely brilliant, not necessarily headline news. What I can tell you and reassure you is that every day we work on this quietly as we think through and plan the best outcome for this club." And he's mentioned their frustration. I totally get why there's frustration, but for me, that's perfectly fine. It's a huge call. They need to take their time because they need to get this right. You mentioned it, once in a generation decision. But it's not just about getting it right for the people and for the city. it's a financial decision that they need to get right as well.
Yeah, and as I've said, this is the brutal world of football now. It's not a sport anymore. It's not just a sport anymore, I should say. It's a business. You know, Newcastle are operating as a business. As much as we love to think it's this massive institution, which it is, it's also run as a business. And the call they will make will be a business one at the end of the day. Going back to what you asked before, I think they have to make that call as a business. Now, you spoke about Tottenham Stadium. You look at what they've got, big concerts on pretty much every year. They've got the NFL games. The amount of revenue that brings in is incredible. And this is why Newcastle are facing this uphill battle when they're trying to, close the gap when it comes to turnover and what clubs are bringing in commercially. Newcastle are dwarfed by clubs at the top end of the table, but Tottenham really aren't other. But the clubs who are traditionally at the top end of the table, there is such a shortfall when it comes to Newcastle's commercial income, and a new stadium would help with that massively, because they would be able to attract bigger concerts, they would be able to attract bigger events, like the NFL and stuff like that, which I know people don't like hearing, but it is a very sad fact of modern football, that you have to look beyond your traditional income and look to bring in money from elsewhere. So that's why at the end of the day it comes down to cold hard business. And I genuinely, I like to think myself as a football romantic more than anything else, and I hate the fact I'm saying those words, but it is true.
It is. I mean, looking at St James's Park, it's clear the demand there is there for extra tickets, but the club are very limited in what they can do when it comes to extending the stadium. Obviously, you've got the listed buildings around the back of the stand. You then got the road, obviously, that is behind the Gallagher and the buildings there. It is very, very difficult, and it would likely cost a lot of money for not very much in terms of added seats in the ground. You're probably looking at the best part of maybe 650, 700 million at a guess, at an estimate, for what, 10, 15, 20,000 seats at most. Is it really worth it?
But that is for the people at the top of the club to decide. You're right. I mean, there are some stadiums that have been built for that, for that cost. And you look at the other complicating factor is obviously the metro station, which would be if you did try and build back, which I don't think they could. I know they've looked into that, obviously. But, you've got the metro station to take into account. I just think it's such a difficult one, and I think it will come down to what you just said there. Is it worth spending those hundreds of millions on adding 10, 12,000 more seats? Or do they go and say, right, we'll spend probably what would be over $1 billion on a new site and get a stadium that'll meet demand, with even a view to extend beyond that if needs be?
Yeah, but moving is hard as well, because we look at other stadiums like Spurs and like Everton. The land was there to be built on. Spurs owned that land, and they could kind of just go ahead and do it while also still playing just down the road at Wembley. That's an issue for Newcastle. Where would they relocate if they needed to rebuild St James's Park, for example? But Everton, they just built on land that had been developed and again was pretty much free, from my understanding, of any real restrictions. It was there to be utilised. Whereas here in Newcastle,
it's not easy, is it?
People want to stay in the city centre, and I 100% want that as well. I want them to stay right in the city centre if they are indeed to move. It's important for the commercial side of the city, or the economics that brings in, all the money that brings into the bars and the hospitality and the hotels and the restaurants. It's important for people to get in as well because of the transport links. Yeah. But it's hard. I mean, right now, name me a location that they can possibly build on easily. Everyone talks about Leazes Park, but we mentioned the red tape you're going to have to jump through before you even get any plans on the table. And then where else is there? I can't think of another location. The Town Moor, perhaps, Castle Leazes, but again, there's certain things you're going to have to jump through there before that even gets signed off. This is the issue Newcastle United have got, and why I think it's taken so long. I think they want to, this is just my opinion, I think they actually do want to move. They want to stay in the city centre though, because they know moving outside the city centre loses that kind of appeal, loses that kind of wow factor, but also won't please the majority of fans. And I think that's one aspect of this whole thing where the majority will agree on. If they are to move, it has to be within the city limits. But we broached that question again. Where on earth is a location?
There was a little bit of talk down by the arena, wasn't there, at one point, but I'm not sure that's a big enough site. You look at the arena, I mean, that's not exactly a massive building itself, and there's not lots of space around there to build upon. But you're right. I mean, look, for me, Newcastle United should be the kind of financial foundations that the city is built upon, almost, because it is one of the biggest draws of the city, is, you know, the football club and the passion for it and such like. And you make a great point about the hospitality side of things in the city. You've got so many, I know we always joke about it, don't we, when those tables come out about pubs within a mile of the stadium, and Newcastle are comfortably at the top of that list. Well, it's because they are where they are in the city, and you think if they were to move outside of the city, which I 100% agree, I'm dead against that, there's no leeway on that for me, you think the money that would be lost in the city centre, in the restaurants, in the pubs, in the fast food outlets, it's a lot of income for them. And basically what at times probably pins them up is that match day experience, or, you know, whatever else tourists come to the city to do stadium tours and things like that. They're going elsewhere, they're not in the city centre. It's a big loss to the city as a whole. So yeah, that is my first point, is we have to stay in Newcastle city centre. Where that is, I don't know. The only thing you can think is here. You say the town moor, but I would argue the town moor will be wrapped up in as much litigation as Leazes Park would be.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the issue. It's just finding a suitable location to build a brand new stadium on. And it's that difficult. Because I guarantee no one in the comments right now watching and listening who wants to remain in the city can pinpoint me A, location that could be built on within the next 5 to 10 years, and B, one that can, like I said, just move that quickly. And one that would be ideal as well.
It'd be good to see people in the comments suggesting that, though, to see where they think, because I'm stumped, I've got to be honest. I can't think of anywhere. It's, again, we mentioned this place in the history here. It's not going to be easy with the red tape and such like, and the town was the same. That I don't think there is a big site around, really. So it's going to be tough.
So the final question then, Mark, the important question that we're going to want everyone in the comments to answer, and the one that we don't really have an answer for.
We don't.
Because I have to say, it's one of those that I just flip-flop nearly every time I think about it. There was a time when I was dead set against moving from St James's Park. And sorry, the key question is, ladies and gents, stay at St James's Park, extend it, or move. That's the key question. And when it was originally put out there after the takeover, dead set against it. I was so against it. No, please don't move. Stay exactly where we are. Even if you don't extend it, just remain at St James's Park. But as time's gone on, my mind has shifted to moving. I've seen what Spurs can do and what they can offer, the concerts, the boxing, and I've seen the money that brings in, the NFL. That's really, really important. Okay, their domestic season is looking like it could end in relegation, but that's nothing to do with the money the stadium is bringing in. If anything, that's a condemnation of how Spurs, from a footballing side of things, has been ran, because the income and the revenue and the commercial revenue is there. And we talk about commercial revenue, Newcastle United's commercial revenue has gone up 44%, but there's going to come a time when they hit a ceiling, and the next step up to that is, I think, a brand new stadium, a £1 billion stadium with all the bells and whistles that offers more than just football. It can offer NFL, it can offer the biggest concerts possible, it can offer the boxing. It is an arena that blows you away, and it would break my heart to move away from St James's Park. In an ideal world, you stay there and you extend it, because there is something special about it, as I say. But the realistic answer, I think, the reality of the whole situation from my point of view, is that for Newcastle United to become the best they can be, unfortunately, it's just not at St James's Park, and it needs to be a brand new arena. The one thing I would say to carry that is, where on earth that is, I'm not too sure. How quickly that happens, that's anyone's guess. And that is the only thing which keeps me kind of, I'd say, 80-20, towards moving to a new stadium. There's just that little doubt in my mind about how quickly this can happen and actually where it can happen.
So for me, it is, going back to what I said earlier, it's a heart and head situation, and the heart is going. I remember walking up the Gallagher steps with my dad when I was 5-year-old, going to my first game. I remember watching Kevin Keegan's side win the championship in what's now the championship anyway, in 92, 93, and really falling in love with the team for the very first time. Watching the entertainers, Bobby's European nights, all those sort of things. And as you said earlier, taking my own son to his first game at St James's not so long ago, and I've got all that emotion built up for one building, trying to not allow that to cloud a decision. But it should, because, as I said, we're a passionate fan base. It's a passionate football club, and emotion has to come into it, as much as people at the top end of the club may not want that to happen. But then I also have my head going, well, the accounts that have come out in terms of the revenue that's come in from the commercial side of the club is up. Brilliant. Unbelievable, great effort. Was it 44% up now? But the turnover is still absolutely dwarfed by the clubs at the top end, and I'm not really sure what more they can do in terms of big, huge deals to bridge that gap. And then we look at the on-field stuff, because that is effectively, because of PSR and such like that, is impacting on how much Newcastle can spend in the transfer market, what players they can keep, which is as big as what they recruit, by the way. And I think you've got a point when you say that to bridge that gap, maybe there is a new stadium built. Needs to be built, sorry. But then I kind of go back to the heart again, which is, as you say, I keep doing this, and I reckon everyone watching, I don't think there's anyone, I don't think anyway, has a definitive 100% stay or go. It's one or the other, and then you probably go back the next day and think, oh yeah, but if we left, then you lose all that history. It's such a difficult one. I'm not as clear cut as what you said, the 80-20. I'm very much 55-45 probably, because you're just losing so much with St James's Park going. You really are. And you have to weigh up that loss with how much do you gain on and off the pitch with a new stadium in the city centre, wherever that may be. I'm just about edging towards a move, but at the same time there are days when I think, no, let's just try and build what we can on St James's, however that may be, and stay. I wish I could say yes or no and give you an answer, but I can't. At the moment I'm edging towards a move, but I could sit here and do the same thing tomorrow.
Essentially,
yeah.
To sum up,
we don't know.
We don't know, and all pray for Brad Miller. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'd love to, as I say, get opinions from everyone if you would stay or go, because I don't think there'll be a groundswell either way. There will be people that will have business heads on, that will look at possible progress on the pitch, and there will be those that will fall firmly in the camp of history and nostalgia, and neither is wrong, by the way.
Yeah. I think, like we say, we want your viewpoint on all of this. Do get into the comments and just have, I think, a bit of patience with the club, to be quite honest with you, because for all the reasons we've discussed, this is a decision which needs to be right. It's not an easy decision, because the answers are detailed, they're complicated, and there's not an easy solution. We all want answers. We'd all love to have the answers tomorrow, but that's just not going to happen. I know there's frustration, we share that, but at the same time I think you do have to give the club a little bit of leeway to let them get to the right decision. We'll all be consulted on it as well as fans, hopefully, and that's the aim, I believe. But maybe save your frustration for something else. Yeah. But let us know in the comments, do you want to stay at St James's Park, or are you open to a move? Thank you very much for tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll catch you guys very soon.